Just gonna wait a little bit and see if anybody hops in here. Hi, Thomas. Yeah, I created a going live later, or however you want to say it, thumbnail, and then I couldn't find out how to make the stupid thing go live, so I had to delete it and just make a new one. So I'm still working on just getting the fire going. So tonight what I'll be working on is a good reenacting buddy of mine. Hi, Jeff. A good reenacting buddy of mine asked me if I could take this tomahawk head, which is an original tomahawk head that was dug in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he asked if I could forge weld the eye back closed, clean up the bit, just put an edge on it, and then I'm going to hang it on this piece of curly hickory. It already fits pretty decent, and he can use it then as a display piece of an original tomahawk head. Now this aligns with looks like a French pattern head, is, you know, most likely a trade hawk. I've done some cleaning on it. I etched it in vinegar to clean all the rust off. There's still obviously deep pitting, which is going to stay. But it's really cool because I can now see, you know, the weld lines. And if you look close, the weld line comes down and back over. So I almost think this thing was a scarf weld. You know, the wraparound eye only came up to about there. And then I don't know if it'll pick up on camera. The bit is a different color. So it does have a forge welded bit. You can kind of see it there. You can definitely see it on that side. I can't see the weld lines on the edges. Maybe after a bit more etching it would show, but I can't really see if it's an insert bit or the taco style where the bit goes around. But either way, this thing is awesome. So I've been taking lots of pictures of it on top of graph paper, weighing it through each step, tracing it out, and then once this thing is done, I definitely want to make a couple of replicas of the original, you know, a copy of the original. But there's not a good place to see it. I can see it in person, but it's a little bit hard to tell. It's definitely a wrought iron body. Focus. Maybe not. It's definitely got a wrought iron body. I can see the grain. See the grain in it. Now, what in the world caused it to split like that, I do not know. The eye definitely looks like it's done some, done some bashing on the back side. It's flattened out on the edges, but the center is still more rounded. So I don't believe that is the beginning shape of the eye. So I've got the forge going. First thing I'm going to do, I'll heat up through here, open it up just a little bit so I can get a brush in here, try and scrub this rust out that I couldn't get to when it was soaking in vinegar. I mean, the vinegar got to it, but I couldn't brush it out. And then I'll close it back up. It looks like these two halves are going to line up pretty well. I don't think it's pitted or rusted too far back that it won't line up. So I'll try and get that squished back together, get everything lined up, get a nice coating of flux on it. I know it's wrought iron, you don't have to have flux, but I'm not here to fuck around and find out. I basically have one shot at this, and I can't afford to mess this up. And then no pressure, but you know, on a live. I decided to go live because my phone quits recording at the half-hour mark if I'm just recording a video. And so I didn't want to try to record a video and then say I finish it in 45 minutes and I don't realize that it's quit recording. Because I want all of this to be documented, from the pictures of how I received it, weight of when I received it, pictures after it's cleaned, weight after it's cleaned, and then reforging it, pictures and weight. And I have laid the tomahawk on my anvil with the eye just overhanging. I took a soapstone and I traced around the profile. So that way, as I am forge welding it back together, I have something to check it against and make sure that I'm staying within the parameters of what it originally looked like. But I will not be blending these welds. You know, you're going to see the original crack in it. You will see, most likely, the weld seam, topping and bottom. I'm fine with that, and Mike, my friend that owns this, is fine with that. It just tells the story. You know, this is just another chapter in the story. But he just wants it together, put that handle on it, so that way he can have it as display. So we will see what happens. And I have to say, I feel very honored to be able to do this. And thank you, Mike, for letting me do this. Part of me screams and cries at, you know, I'm ruining an antique, but the other part of me is just so happy that I'm able to experience this, and to be able to really look into an original tomahawk head, see the weld lines, get a better idea of how they were made, and then to have a scale, you know, be able to draw out a pattern of an exact scale from an original. I think that is so cool. And just a note, this will definitely be a very slow paced. I'm not rushing any of this. So you might just get to enjoy a bunch of seeing my anvil and sheet metal on the wall, but this will not be a rushed process. Got a nice heat on that. Do it on camera. Just going to take my scrolling tongs, open that eye up. This feels so surreal. So now the broken part that was folded around and the part of the eye that was broken is out. I have that laying in the fire now. I'm going to heat that up. I'll bring it out, brush the inside surface real well, apply some flux. Then I will flip it over and lay the other part on the bottom of the fire, heat it up, clean it, flux it. Then I'll heat the eye back up, close the two back together. Yeah, Jeff, and my mind goes to the blacksmith that made this. You know, he was just chunking out tomahawk after hawk after hawk, trade knife, scalping knife, arrowheads. Whoever made this, he was just a manufacturer. But to think if you could go back in time and say, hey, 250 years later, somebody's going to dig up that tomahawk, it's going to be broken, and somebody's still going to be blacksmithing, and he's going to fix it. That's what really boggles my mind. I've got my brush, and my forge welding will be with this very light crossbeam hammer. All I want to do is tack it together. Like I said, no blending, not going to squish it down, flip it, squish it, none of that. We're just going to stick it. Got a good heat on there. Give it a good brushy brush. And don't tell Roy, but I'm going overkill on the flux. I'll heat that back up and let the flux really melt and flow on the surface. As you can see, way too much flux is on there. But I want a good solid coating. And speaking of, I have nobody but Roy to thank. I thank Roy a million times for giving me the confidence in my forge welding. That's what makes something like this possible. Have somebody really good to teach you and to grow your confidence in it. I mean, this thing's wrought iron. I've welded wrought iron more times than I care to count. I love it. It welds so easy. I know I can weld this. It's wrought iron. It's easy. But if I burn it in half, that's what's got me, changing my pants regularly. Alright, that flux is good and melted. I'm just going to give it an extra sprinkle in case any started to kind of burn off a little, but we're good. We're good. Now we'll get the other part of the eye nice and hot. Now what I'm most nervous about with this whole thing It's not going to be used, of course. It's a display piece, but I want it to be functional. I want to reheat treat the bit. I don't know what that steel is. Most likely, from the time period, it's going to be a water hardening, but I'll probably quench in oil just to be on the safe side. And then I'm really hoping there's no stress cracks or anything in it from the previous time it was forged and quenched that are going to open up. And I guess if they do, it's part of the story of the tomahawk. It is what it is at the end of the day, but that's the next thing I'm worried about. Heating up nice and slow, nice, easy, gentle air blast. Yes, Thomas, I'm going to upload this and make it public, especially so I can send it to Mr. Mike Judson, the fellow that gave me this axe or tomahawk and asked me to restore it. So that way, he can watch it, the general public can watch it, and then I will probably do a video later when it's all cleaned up and hung, so I can take measurements. I want to share that with the public. Um, I can, show the pictures of the original and then weights and everything, because I want this to be open to the public, because it's history. There's people who will appreciate this. Looks like we're hot enough for a brush and flux. That's a good heat. So you can really see actually how far delaminated that was. So I'll give some quick light taps all the way up as I re-weld the eye. Throw it back in the fire and really get that melted. Then I can close it back up and cross my fingers. and I'll have to verify with what Mike had told me. He texted to me. I haven't had time to look into it, but I believe it was Richardville was the name of the guy who owned the house historically where this tomahawk was found. So I really want to do some um, looking into that, and try and find out what all might have been going on. I'm not the best when it comes to historical dates, um, and I'd never heard of this person. Sorry to that may offend, like you, Mike, but I'd never heard of him before learning of this tomahawk. So I really cannot go into the history of what may have happened or anything as far as that goes to um, as to why this tomahawk would be there. Besides the fact that tomahawks were many, as a trade item, so they were all around. But sprinkle just a touch more flux in there to be sure, but it's glossy all the way across. I know there's plenty. I'm gonna let this cool down for just a minute because I want this section to cool down so I can reheat the pole end, because that's what I heated when I unfolded it, so that's what I'm going to heat when I refold it. So I'll let this cool down, heat up the pole end, fold that eye back together. Hopefully it fits right together like a glove, and then we can actually weld it. I'm actually going to use this time. There's a couple bits of big bits of rust in here. I'm just going to use the time while the eye is spread open and it's hot to try and pick all that rust out. Give it a good brushing. I really don't want to, I want to ruin as little of the pitting as I can, just because that, is the story of the tomahawk. Looks pretty decent. You can actually see when I unfolded the eye, it's still plenty hot. There's a layer of wrought iron, one of the layers kind of came unfolded. Interesting stuff. I know this might not be the most exciting live stream you guys have ever watched, but for me, this is definitely one of the most exciting forging projects that I have done. I'm like a little kid in a candy store. I'll use my scrolling pliers to re-roll the eye the same, well, the same but exact opposite way I unrolled it, to try and keep everything as, trying to think of how to say what explain what I'm thinking. If I unroll with pliers and I try and hammer it back together, it won't be the same forces canceling each other out, essentially. So ideally, I'll be able to roll this back together and have it back to the original shape it was found in, because the eye was pretty good. It was nice and centered. It wasn't lopsided. It just beat in on the pull. So I don't want to cause a bunch of extra work for myself. So we'll see if I can kind of roll this back around. Lines up pretty well. And that's pretty close to the way it started. So that seemed to work out. Now we need to... Oh, man. Those two pieces fit together just like a puzzle. Definitely want to switch to different tongs. I'm going to put this in the vise and give it a little squeeze to kind of get it closed up. Hear that flux of crunching. I'm going to go with these tongs. So I can slip it right in there. Alright, I've got a little bit of tweaking to do to try and get that to come. This side needs to come forward. There's too big of a gap between the joint. So I need to try and ease that in there, get that a bit tighter, and then I can go in for the forge weld. So at this point I want a nice heat over the welded surfaces so the flux re-wets, melts. That way I can try and, I hate to do it, but I think I'm going to have to hammer on the back of the pole to get those two parts to come together. I don't really know how else to do it. If you have any ideas, let me know. Because I don't want to deform that eye a bunch. I don't have a good drift for this. It's going to be mostly all hammer work. But so far, that's the best angle of attack I can think of. I'm also going to enjoy a nice Yingling while doing this. Actually, since I'm reshaping the bit anyway, maybe I can grab onto the eye with my eye tongs and then drive the bit in so I'm not hammering on the pull. Yep, America's Oldest Brewery. Good stuff. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to I use a block of wood. This piece of 2x2 pine. I can smack the bit while I'm hanging on to the eye, the side of the eye, and try and drive that joint together a bit better. I don't know why I dropped those in there. I dropped my hammer in there. It's hard to tell too if that break was original the entire time this piece has been in the ground. The ends of that break have been rusting away. So maybe it doesn't need to go all the way forward, but I don't want to have that giant crack. There's going to be a visible seam where that crack was. I'm not blending that out. But now I'm kind of second guessing myself. Maybe it does need to be apart, or am I overthinking it? I don't know. That flux is melted. I'm going to try and drive it together. I'm going to drive it together. That actually went together very, very nicely. I'm glad I did that. That went together very well. Sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet. I'm going to give this good brushing and another coat of flux. Now that it's together, the capillary action can take place. Actually, I'll wait. I'll reheat it and make sure the flux will flow. But that closed up just beautifully. Top and bottom. You can see how those fit together like a puzzle. And you'll be able to see that little zigzag or whatever when it's done, because I'm not blending that. Okay, now I'm getting excited. And the eye is... the eye did get slightly deformed, not too bad. I think I can hammer that back out. I can hammer that out and make it work. Yeah, I'm getting excited about this now. I was already excited about it, but oh, good stuff. Good stuff. So I'm just really going for a nice slow heat now. I want to get it up to about an orange or so, and try and get it heated orange throughout, not just the outside surface. Then I'll sprinkle some more flux on the seam. I already know there's good flux in the joint, but just to make sure nothing's burnt out, because it's been exposed to oxygen for quite a bit, you know, just since I've been forging it. So now that it's tight together, that capillary action will help draw the flux in, and you do it. The closer to forge welding you apply the flux, the better, because there's less chance of burning out, because it's not as long in the forge after the flux. So I just want to go nice and slow and get this up to heat. I don't want to risk burning the bit, you know, risk burning through the eye. The hardest part to heat is that middle section. That might be why the forge weld actually failed in the first place, because that is the trickiest section to get hot without burning your ends. So nice slow heat and let it soak. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Can you guys hear me? I guess I should have asked that a long time ago, because I have you resting on my workbench, but next to the forge. For all I know, I've covered up the microphone. You can't hear a thing I'm saying. All right, thanks, Jeff. Now, Jeff, are you bored out of your mind as slow pace as this is going? Got a good heat on there. Get some flux going. Yep, that's some good heat. That's hot. I'm going to tippity tap this together. Make sure everything's good and tight. We're going to heat her up. We're going to go for a forge weld. Good to hear, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for that input. Wax and Moon, no, this is an original tomahawk. When the live is done, I'm going to make it public and upload it. This is an original tomahawk that was found metal detecting in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the guy that owns it currently asked me to forge weld it back together. It had a broken eye on it, so I'm re-welding it. I'm making a new handle for it, and then he can use it as a presentation piece of what an original tomahawk, of an original tomahawk. So I'm trying to get it, conserve as much of the pitting and everything as I can. All I'm doing is forge welding the eye back together. I will put an edge on the bit. He asked me to do that, and then put a handle on it. But no, this is an original 250-year-old tomahawk. And my little dog came in to say hi. Say hi, Stella. So I'm working on the forge weld heat now. I don't want to just let it cook in the fire because it'll start oxidizing. So not going to be ignoring you guys. I just going to step away for a few minutes and focus on the steel or the iron. So I can hear either the flux boiling or wrought iron also makes this noise when it's up to welding temperature. It's a very, very light sizzle kind of sound. Not a sizzle. Imagine bacon as it's warming up. It starts popping, like as soon as it starts popping. But I have to make sure it's not the eye that's down in the fire. Like I said, this is the trickiest part to actually weld. Which is probably the reason it was the part that was broken. Alright, I think I'm going to go for the first welding heat. See if we can tap something together. Color is consistent throughout, which gives me hopes for a weld, but it's just a very light tack weld. So I'll put some more flux on. Go in for a second welding heat. Now I see one thing I've been looking, I haven't said anything about it, but I'm looking for is consistent color in the bit. If I see the heat from the body coming up and then there's a sharp line where the bit's darker, that means the bit is coming undone, and I don't want that. No, nobody wants that. So been trying to pay attention to that to make sure there's nothing else funky going on. Big chunk of scale on the eye. Okay. Yep, I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna put the other side down to make sure that each side has had a chance to get thoroughly hot. It really doesn't make a difference, because if one piece is hot and the other isn't, it won't take. But I think we have a good tack. Not a problem, Wax Moon. Yep. Hey, Stella. Wax Moon says hi. Yes, borax. That's what I use for flux. And this is Sid. This is the big dog. The big dog. That does not like being picked up. Good dogs. Alright. So I'll get this heated up. We'll go in for welding heat number 2. See how that goes. See if I think we need a heat number 3. Most likely, hopefully, cross your fingers, this welding heat number 2 will take care of it. Like I said, we're just tacking it together. This is not going to be a user. He just wants it back together. I'm not blending weld seams. None of that. Been going for 51 minutes already. Starting to hear a little bit of that sizzly popping sound. Getting a little bit of yellow flame coming out. I think we're going to go ahead and try this for heat number 2. Alright, I am pretty happy with how that is. Make sure you wear safety glasses. I'm going to call that good. There's still a really nice, I mean, you could say crack, it's a crack, but fissure, there you go, where that original break was, but I've got good color throughout. It's acting like one piece of iron. I think we did a good job forge welding that. I'll try and chip the scale off before this cools down. Easier said than done. I really don't. Normally what I would do, something like this, and I might be able to do a little bit of it, I'd come up on edge, and that'd knock the scale off. But I don't want to reshape this and lose all that pitting. It actually preserved majority of the pitting over the piece. And that's what I want. I want to keep that pitting. I want people to know it's been in the ground for 200 years, 250 years. It's got this giant crack in it. That's where it was originally broken. Then it was forge welded back together. So I'm going to heat this end up to a nice orangey color and give it a really good brushing. It's got a lot of scale on it. I've had this thing at welding heat quite a bit. And then just try and get that cleaned up. Then I'll heat up the eye end, try and reshape that to fit the tomahawk handle. I'm doing a video. I mean, if you want to. It's a live video, so you'll see everything.
I'm at least semi-decent. Can I interrupt this very important message to ask what you would like for dinner?
Here.
Pizza.
I need to clean out
Regular.
I'll run in and get gas one at it. I got it fully filled. Huh? Yes. Black Bear Forge. Not sure what you mean there, but I mean, I watch Black Bear Forge. He's a cool guy. Roy from Christ-Centered Ironworks. He's the one that got me addicted to forge welding, and who I took classes from. Or was that in regards to the whole safety glasses thing? Then yes. Yes, he is adamant about that. Safety squints. We're good. Man, a lot of that scale is hard on there. That may be a soak and vinegar deal. Now the color is still... I'm not happy with that color. I'm not too happy with that. I'm going to go for one more welding heat. Now it's expected for this to be a different color than here because I'm leaving that crack. I'm not welding that and blending it. But there shouldn't be a color difference this way. That's obviously not welded. I'm going to go for one more, tack it up a little bit better. Now at this point, it's already been at welding heat and fluxed twice. So regardless of whether that weld actually took, it has driven out majority of the impurities. Obviously not all of them because it's not welded or it wasn't at the right temperature. I'm not going to flux this. It's wrought iron, which is self-fluxing, so I shouldn't have to flux it in the first place. So we're just going to go for this. Try and get a good solid tack on that middle section. I think it's already welded. I'm pretty confident that it's got a good weld up by the eye. That's what really matters. But now that it's visible for the whole world, I'm going to make sure that it's welded completely across. So long as I can do it without displacing too much material. And open another beer. Trying to get that work down where I can get a nice good heat without burning the eye and without burning the bit. I know I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. This part is the hardest part to forge weld. Because when your bit is nice and thin, that wants to heat up fast. Your eye is nice and thin, that wants to heat up fast. When I have to heat up the center section without burning the other two ends. Definitely a lot of jostling back and forth and a lot of bake time. Just let it sit, let it soak. Had a few little sparklers coming out, very tiny sparks. So I backed the air down. I want to let it, just like I said, let it soak here. That means the bottom side is up to heat for wrought iron. Tool steel, you should never let it spark, but that means the bottom of the wrought iron is up to heat, but I want to wait and let that soak through to the top. So it's like a snail's pace crank on the blower. I can see into the fire and see the eye to make sure I'm not burning that. And I have the bit sticking just at the edge of the coke on the other side. So I can see the bit is up to orange, but it's not burning. So I can monitor both sides and make sure that that's not going awry. I think I have that center section up. I'm going to go in for weld number 3. And regardless of how this goes, I'm going to call it after this because I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to ruin it trying to make it perfect. Because, I mean, it is what it is. It belongs in a museum. That's a good heat. That felt pretty good. If it was something I was making for myself, that's good enough. If it's something I was making to sell, I don't know. But for what it is, that's going to be it. It's not the best weld, but it's definitely stuck. Just the ends aren't quite there, but that's going to be the story of this piece. That's the side with the bad scale on it. The side I had pointed down. Try and get most of that picked off. I'll really use a hammer. The rest of that will come off with a good soak in vinegar. Because I don't want to lose any more mass due to scale. It's pretty straight. So right here at the very ends, it's still, I don't think that's quite welded, but up in here is welded good. I got most of this welded back down. Same on this side. You can see that big old fissure crack where the original break was. I'm leaving that because that's the story of this tomahawk. So I'll let this cool down. I'll heat the eye up, give that just a little bit of tweaking, get it to fit the handle. Like I said, you saw in the original, when I first started the video, the original eye actually fit the handle shape pretty well. It fit that teardrop pretty well. It was a little bit proud on these corners, but the pull-in was smashed in. I think that was from just use, whether pounding tent stakes or human skulls, I don't know. So I'm going to re-round that backside, and I think it'll fit this teardrop about perfect. thinking come in here. I want to come in that way first. Can round over that. Got a big round drift. That's not even big enough. May end up being over the horn of the anvil. We'll find out. We'll make it work. It's kind of funny. The reenactment I was just at, it's called Five Metals at the Trace, at Stone's Trace, Ligonier, Indiana. I had this tomahawk head on display with some of my blacksmithing stuff I was selling. And I explained to quite a few people, you know, the origins of the head, the plan with rewelding the eye and using it as a display piece. And it was kind of like a, probably 75-25%, where 75% of the people thought that was really cool and 25% of the people said, don't touch it, like you're ruining it. But there was this one guy who, when I explained that I was going to forge weld it back together, and he's like, there's not enough mass, like you cannot forge weld that. It's too dirty. You're going to have to tear it apart, grind the surfaces perfectly clean, stick it back together, and then you're down to 1/8 of an inch. By the time you forge weld it, you're down to 1/16 of an inch. And it's just, it's funny, the, not funny, but sad, I guess, the impression people get who watch these shows, you know, forge welding. They watch the guys who, they have to take every billet of steel to a surface grinder or belt sander to make sure the surface is perfectly clean so they can forge weld, otherwise it'll never work. Majority of the forge welds I do in this shop are dirty forge welds. If I'm doing an axe eye, I got a perfect example. Here's a tomahawk I'm working on. Work on making that tomahawk. The eye has a wraparound and a scarf. So I take my starting stock, which I think was 1/2. I forge out for the eye, leave the pull, forge the other half of the eye, and then forge my scarf, fold it over. I don't do any cleaning in between. I just fold over that as forged material. That's what flux is for. As long as you aren't being stupid about it, that flux will clean it. The flux, that's what flux is for. Same with a bit. This is a forge weld bit. You can see I didn't quite clean out my forge weld there. Didn't quite clean it out there. But it's got a good solid weld. If it'll focus, I'll just take my word for it. This side's the same. Well, actually, this one cleaned out pretty well. This one I've got a bigger divot in. But it's a clean, that's a solid weld. And I hot chiseled the bit, or the bit side of the mild. I hot chiseled that. That made my wedge of spring steel. Stuck it in there with forged scale still on it. Welds up just fine. The axe will have probably just a baked on oil finish. The guy I'm doing it for, he said that if he got it cleaned up in the white, he was going to do a cold bluing on it. But I think just a black forge finish. So I'll heat the entire head to black heat, but I will take the bit to um, critical when I quench. So it gives a black, finish over the entire head. Plus it hardens the bit. And then I will shine up just the cutting edge of the bit, and then temper it, probably with the torch, maybe in the forge. I'll temper it till the bit turns a straw color, then put the entire thing back in oil, so it'll have a blacksmith finish, a burnt oil seasoning, if you will. Most likely how it would have looked coming from the trading post. So now I'm just working on rounding that eye back out. And remember, this is to be for a display piece. It's a representation. It's not going to suit the weather like what a traditional tomahawk would have seen. So I'm not worried about trying to pick the best anti-rusting coating I can find. I just want something to make it look like how it would have looked 200 years ago. And that's the big thing about reenacting too, is it seems like a lot of people with as far as their tools, their knives, their rifles, they go after that rustic look. But that's what we've seen after the rifle being in the family for 200 years. I guarantee you, when you got that rifle from the gunsmith, it wasn't all tarnished. The brass wasn't, didn't have that brown coating on it. No, it would have been shiny. It would have been nice. It would have been flashy. Might not have been the best thing for hiding out in the woods when you're running from somebody, but that's how it would have been. That would have been new. Okay. So I need to skinny up. This is a another tomahawk handle I have. It's the same as the one I'm going to use. Same shape, same profile, everything. But I don't want to slip this one in there and make burn marks on it. So I'm using this one as like a trial, a little tester. So just have a little bit of tweaking to go on the eye. It's a little bit too fat right now. It's like this. I need it to be like that. So I need to squish the sides in. And then I think the handle will be a go. Now, being wrought iron, I can do some cold shaping on this after the fact to make it a perfect fit. But I don't want to go too far with that because of the fact that I did not heavily weld that joint, that the eye back together. There is a risk of it popping back apart. So I really want to get this as close as I can right now. No, Wax and Moon, these were from Crazy Crow Trading Post. Hickory handles. I got them as defects. This one has a little bit of chip out right there. So I assume that's why it was a defect. This one, I'm not entirely sure why it was a defect. I mean, it has heartwood and sapwood. That's the only thing I can see. Otherwise, that's a good hand. I mean, it's still a good hand. That doesn't affect it for me. This one is curly hickory. You can see the curls in it. Beautiful, beautiful handle. When I received it, on one of the sides, there was a big chip from one of the curls. Because on curly anything, the grain goes in, out, in, out, in, out. That's what causes the curls. Well, when they're CNCing it, one of those curls chipped out. Well, they just chucked it in the reject bucket, not knowing that is a beautiful piece of curly hickory. So I just sand it smooth, and that's what it's going to be. Been saving it for a special occasion. Now this is definitely none too hot. But at this point, I really do not want to be causing any more oxidation than I have to. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Alright. That fit good. I'm going to try the curly one real quick. Yep. I like it. That'll drive in real nice. I may close up the bottom. It was a little bit loose on the bottom. So I'll hammer that in. But that little bit of tweaking can be done when it's cold. It's not perfect, but neither am I. Trying to kind of knock some of that scale off. Alright, I'm going to call that good enough. Good enough before I mess something up. That's the hard thing about a project like this. I am my own worst enemy when it comes to critiquing my work. But I can only go so far with something like that. Because if I push it too far, I won't have any steel left. Big old crack in the side. That side's still good. The bit still looks good. I like it. So I'll go ahead and heat up the bit side and normalize that. Actually, I may heat it up. It's already been through a couple of heat cycles now just from the forging, so I'll heat it up, throw it in my ash bucket, and normalize it. And then I can grind the edge. I'll fit the handle, and then I can heat treat the edge. Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of pressure. But that was fun. That was cool. Really makes you just kind of think back about who made that, who carried it, what all it's been through. And everybody whose hands have been on it, you know, what would they think about? Would they believe that in 250 years that would have been an awesome find to dig up and it was worth repairing? You know, to them it was trash, it was broken. But this was really fun. So I thank you guys for watching along. As slow and boring as it may have been. Took about an hour and a half, it looks like. Not too bad. But I will post an update video once it's all finished, and then it will be ready to go. So, y'all take care.